The presenters were talking amongst themselves earlier, saying they were slightly nervous coming on stage, but these presenters need no notes. It's really true. They have dirt under their fingernails, they have the air in their face, and this next presenter is no exception to that. Devon Karchut. I have a friend named Tarchuk. You might be closely related. Karchut. Devon is the director of the TimberNook of Greater Calgary and loves nothing more than spending time outdoors with children. She has been a pediatric physiotherapist for 13 years and truly believes that authentic play outdoors is not only the key to optimal gross motor development, but also to overall development of the whole child. In her 5 years providing TimberNook programs, Devon has seen firsthand incredible transformation in children as they gain the confidence, resilience, problem-solving skills, physical skills, and interpersonal skills. When we try to sum up what does environmental education and outdoor learning mean, that's why it's so difficult. It's all of those things. Devon is an avid outdoors woman and spends much of her time running, hiking, skiing, and camping. And not least of all, she is a proud mom of a 9-year-old child. Please help me in welcoming Devon.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So it is not lost on me what an opportunity this is to stand and speak in front of a lot of you. I'm going to try and not be too nervous and just enjoy that I get this chance because it is pretty special. My goal tonight is to add some ammunition to what you already know and what you're already fighting for when you advocate for the importance of the work that you're doing. Because I think we all feel that. We all know how powerful our work is, but we spend a lot of time and effort convincing other people that what we're doing is vital. So maybe you'll learn 1 or 2 new things you can add to the ammunition when we go back to our own communities. So my own story. So I really did play street hockey with a broom. So in the early days, I was very lucky to grow up in the beautiful neighborhood of Wildwood in Calgary. And I played a lot of street hockey. And I had trails nearby. And I was always moving. I was always outside. Always a very emotional, big feeling type of child. So I can remember there's this trail, Douglas Fir Trail, if anyone is familiar with Calgary. I would run there when I would get upset or overwhelmed, and I had this little spot I would hide. Like quite young, I would do this. I don't know what my parents thought. And I would sit there, and I would breathe, and I would be under the trees until I calmed down. And then I'd go home, and I'd be okay. That I was probably 7 years old that I recognized that calm that I found in nature. And that was something that has stuck with me all through my life. The middle picture, I was one of the very fortunate teenagers that got to be a part of outdoor programs. Bert East and Tom Inkster, some of you may know those names. But my experiences with them, accessing in the natural world, it was literally life-changing for me. I found the magic and the awe in nature, and I think I felt more alive in nature than in any other place. So that has stuck with me, and I feel very lucky for those opportunities, which has led me to a super, super cool job. So I'm a physiotherapist by training, and I still do a bit of traditional physio, but I brought my work outdoors. So I run TimberNook, which is an outdoor enrichment program. So a little bit different than forest school. I like to think more imagination. And then I also run outdoor therapy programs. So instead of kids going to a physio clinic, they come in a small group to the forest. And instead of walking on a balance beam, we play on logs and we invent games. And it's been quite amazing to see kids experience therapy through that lens. So often when we think about outdoor learning and nature, we think we're going to go outside and we're going to learn about nature. And for the next 10 or so minutes, we're going to flip that on its head and think, how does nature support us to learn? So that's what I've called the talk tonight, how does nature let us learn? Because just being in nature has a significant impact on our brain and our body and the way that we learn. This is my favorite diagram, if I could pick one diagram. So this is called the pyramid of learning. And what this is the perfect visual representation of how sensory motor development and those sensory motor systems really form the basis of all our learning, all of our functioning, all of our higher level thinking. And I feel like all of you, and that I need to justify the work that I do. In schools, physios are not prized. Everyone wants an OT to help with printing. Everyone wants a speech path to help with clarity of speech. People don't think that it's important that a child can run and jump and balance and climb. So I pull this out a lot to justify, really, sensory motor is the basis of everything. So we should be the most important. And this is not just a plea for a raise. I will note physios get paid substantially less than speech paths, but that's a whole nother story. So that sensory motor area, it is the foundation of all learning, of all thinking, especially that sensory part at the bottom. And when people throw around the term sensory all the time, and it drives me crazy because we often use it incorrectly, people say, we're doing sensory. Well, that doesn't even make any sense. You don't do sensory. Or they say, yeah, check off the box. We did a sensory bin. We stuck our hands in some rice. We're good. And it is so much more complex than that. So sensory integration is one term in that field of sensory. So sensory integration is how we are taking in and interpreting senses in our body and then having a response. So if we have a healthy, well-integrated system, so say for our auditory system right now. So I'm going to pick on, where's Sylvie? Okay, I'm going to pick on Sylvie. So Sylvie's auditory system is not adequately integrated. So right now, Sylvie wants to listen to me so badly. She is fascinated by everything I'm saying. But right now, all she hears is there's like a little buzz of the lights. Or like a fan. Now I'm going to point it out. You're all going to hear it. So because her sensory system is not integrated, she cannot pay attention to me, even though she desperately wants to. So you can see how this is going to impact a child in the classroom. So that's sensory integration. And the way senses become integrated is through rich sensory experiences, more than putting our hands in a bin of rice. So before I move on to movement, one more thing with the sensory systems is that many sensory experiences can be very regulating for us, not all. So for example, and when we're all different, right? So everyone has their things that they do to be calm or that they find calming. Some kids spin, and we're like, stop spinning. But they're doing that because they're trying to regulate their sensory systems. If we think about lighting, we're probably all pretty similar on like these lights shining at me are not regulating for me right now. But if we're out in the forest and there's that gentle light filtering through the trees, our nervous system is calm. So sensory experiences can be calming or not. Often the ones we find in nature are going to be calming. So that's a little bit about how this all has to do with nature and the outdoors. But there's so much more to it. So thinking about the outdoors, thinking about nature, and the experiences we can have outdoors that we just can't indoors. The outdoors is your secret weapon to helping kids build that strong pyramid. Go back to that. So think of this as your little secret thing that you know that maybe no one else knows, that you are going to be able to help and support kids in this really huge way by getting them outside. So I'm going to give you a crash course on how we can use nature and the outdoors to optimize learning. Normally I would talk for like an hour on this, so I'm going to try very hard to not. Well, I won't talk for an hour. But we'll get the highlights. So movement. When we are outdoors, and I'm going to use outdoors and nature interchangeably. Outdoors is great, nature is better, but anything outside is better than inside in my mind. So when we're outside, especially in nature, kids can have, well, we know they move more, they use bigger movements, they use more of a variety of movements, and the sensory experience is richer. So all of those things mean that more areas of our brain are going to be stimulated, more connections are being made in our brain, more learning. So this little girl, she's setting up a pulley system in a tree. So looking at the brain and what might be going on for this little girl. So these are the different cortexes or areas of the brain. So her motor cortex is being stimulated by her climbing. Her sensory cortex is being stimulated by the different textures of the bark. She's feeling the wind and the sun on her skin. She can feel the sap. She can smell the sap. Her cerebellum, or the hind part of her brain, is being stimulated because she is leaning and like holding on and tying knots. So her balance system is being stimulated. And then there's two areas that are in this brain that are super interesting. The Broca's area and the Wernicke's area. So these two areas of the brain are super important for our production of speech and our understanding of speech, which just happen to be really close to those motor and sensory areas. So when we have these really meaningful, rich motor sensory experiences, we get more blood flow to those speech and language areas. So lots of times, if kids are having speech and language delays, if you are pairing their therapy with movement, you're going to get better results. So that little girl in the picture actually has speech and language needs, and that movement piece for her is huge. So she's also learning about simple machines, which is in her grade 4 curriculum. And what a meaningful way for her to learn about simple machines. That you cannot replicate that in the classroom. So pretty powerful. So the other thing about the outdoors, playing in nature, is we have a lot of opportunity to move things. So I said earlier that I am a mover. So even standing in the spot right now is quite hard for me. So being outside there, especially if we're allowing kids to build, there's lots of opportunities for doing things with two hands. Really, really important, not just for our little ones, but for our big ones too. So when we use both hands, we're using both sides of our brain, and we're building the connection between the right side of our brain and the left side of our brain. Should I quiz you? What's the structure that divides your right and left side of your brain? Yes, who said that? Good job. Corpus callosum. So this is a brain structure right in between the right and the left side of the brain, and its function is to help coordinated communication between those two sides. So our right brain has certain jobs, our left brain has certain jobs, but for us to think in a really complex way, like say we're having a big philosophical discussion with a friend, we're going back and forth, accessing those two sides of our brain because we have such awesome corpus callosums. The way that we develop that strong communication between right and left is through experience. So when we do things like this little boy is lifting up a board. So he's using two sides of his body at the same time. He's crossing the midline of his body, which is going to go from right to left in his brain. When we do things like, we do a lot of piñatas in my program. So when we're swinging a stick or swinging a baseball bat, two hands crossing the midline of our body. So when we're doing that, we are strengthening that connection in our brain. So if we want kids to be able to have higher level thinking, to be able to think critically, and to be access both sides of their brain, then we need to make sure that they're able to do those things. There are two other things in school that you do that move across the midline of your body. I'm going to give you a hint. Writing and reading, left to right. So oftentimes in kids, crossing midline that ability doesn't develop till sometimes around 4 or 5. And you'll see kids, OTs do this as a test. They do a cross, and kids will they'll do the line down, then they'll use this hand, they'll switch hands, and they'll do the other line because they can't actually cross the midline. So it's something that takes practice to develop. So when kids are building forts, when kids are putting up tarps, when kids are moving heavy, loose parts, they're strengthening that right brain, left brain connection. And there's a really great bonus if you're giving kids heavy things. Heavy work is often calming on our nervous system. So if you have a kid who I call them bashers and crashers, who are just banging into everything and can't sit still, they need heavy things to lift. And I have tried to assign heavy work in classrooms before. It's very hard. Tell the kid to carry some books and move some chairs. It's not great. But if they can go outside and they can haul some tires and they can lift boards, they can climb trees, all of a sudden they're calm. I had one little boy that he was breaking everything in their house. So I got his mom to put a tire out in the backyard and a baseball bat. And he would go out and he would smash the tire with the baseball bat, didn't break anything, and then he would come back inside and he would be able to do his day. So we get a lot of active, especially little boys in my programs, and some preschool, or kids who've been kindly asked to leave preschool, and they thrive in our programs because they're able to meet their sensory needs. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time. Jade, am I okay? Not okay. Can you give me a number? Oh, just go? 2 minutes? 2 minutes. Okay. I wasn't sure how to interpret. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you one more tidbit to think about, and then I'll do a little wrap up. I have 3 more things, but I won't do them all. So vestibular system, aside from this being a very cute little girl, she is upside down and she has slid down a box slide into a big pile of leaves. This was childhood is going really well for this little girl right now. So our vestibular system, and this is why I want to include this one because this is the most important of all the systems. If you hear anything that I've said tonight, hear this one. So your vestibular system is your sensory system that governs all other systems in your body. It's the system that's stimulated when the position of your head moves. It's the thing that makes us all dizzy as adults. When we spin, we go on swings, we go on rides. And it's also underdeveloped in a lot of the kids that we are working with because they are not moving enough. So it's not just movement. It's not counting steps. It's specific types of movement where your head actually changes position. So if you walk, you're not getting vestibular movement. If you sprint down a hill, you will. If you roll, if you swing, if you slide, if you climb, all of these things are going to stimulate our vestibular system. All of those things could happen indoors, but usually get in trouble. So much easier to do outdoors, and nature is the best playground, I think. So our vestibular system, it actually helps to regulate our emotions, which we all need in our lives, and the kids that we work with do as well. It also impacts attention. So again, you might see kids in your class who are rocking or moving or wiggling. They are not trying to be stinkers. They are trying to wake their body up so that they can listen to you. So in order to sit still and to listen, we have to move, and we have to have those big movements big vigorous movements where the position of our head changes. So if you started your classroom day with some of that movement, you would have such a more productive day. Interesting, in your own schools, if you were to ask teachers how the kids are after they've been with you in a class where they might have to sit still, my guess would be that they can pay attention better. So we're going to skip eye development. We've talked a bit about this, but that's also a very cute little girl. Google attention restoration theory, also fascinating. So just to wrap up today, I know this is just a snippet of brain development in like 11 minutes. But I just want to wrap up by saying the work that you're doing, yes, you are connecting kids to nature, but you're also supporting their learning and their brain development. You're allowing them to focus, to attend, to think deeply, and you're allowing them to meet their own sensory needs. So instead of at 3 o'clock having to dim the lights and hand out wiggle cushions and fidgets to everyone, kids can meet their sensory needs in the way that they need to. So then you're going to have these super regulated kids. They're going to be alert. They're not going to get in trouble as much. They're going to listen. They're going to retain information, and they're going to enjoy school. So this is big stuff here. And we already know the benefits of connecting kids to nature. We know that it helps their immune system, their mental health. We know that it creates feelings of stewardship. Like, this should be enough. But now you have a few extra little bits of ammunition to support what you're doing and the value of the work that you're doing with kids outdoors. So if someone tells you that there's no time to go outside because academics need to be focused on, you can have a few words for them. So thank you for your time tonight. I hope you learned something new, and I look forward to learning alongside you tomorrow.